we're going to hit a couple of things today. And just as a review, we kind of started off with an overview and understanding of God's will for our finances, right? And we understand that that's more about a heart issue than anything else. And then we talked in week 2, we talked about budgeting, really how everything that you want to accomplish with your finances hinges on your ability to budget. So if you're not budgeting, you're really not accomplishing anything, in fact. So then week 3, we talked about, what did we talk about in week 3? Debt payoff, that's right. We talked about debt payoff, some of the dangers of that, and then after that we talked about retirement. We all planned our retirement there in that week in like 45 minutes. It was awesome. And then after that we hit giving and sort of a traditional understanding of the tithe and the Old Testament view versus the New Testament view and what that's all about. And then this week we're going to hone in really on the issue of home buying, which we haven't talked about too much, and I promised that we would work through an exercise of home buying, so we're going to do that. But firstly, what we're really going to hit is I sent out to a couple people a budget template that's similar to the one that I use. It's not exactly the same, but it's similar. And it's the definition of a geek sheet, okay? So like it does everything for you. You don't even need to know how to use Excel. You just have to type in your expenses, and it calculates everything for you. So I'm going to preview that for those of you who actually received that, just so you can see how it works. And maybe for some of you who are working on building your own budget, you can kind of see, get some ideas for your own situation. Again, it doesn't matter where you are. You should have a budget. And you don't have to do it in Excel. There's software out there that will actually do it, like Quicken is one, and there are some others that you can, fork out a little money for, and they'll actually do it for you. I don't have one that I recommend just because I've looked at a couple, and I've not really loved one particular one that you can use for free. And I refuse to spend money on it, so that's just my cheapness going in there. And then after that, mortgage. We're going to answer the question today, how much house can you afford based on a couple expert recommendations. That's a pretty fun exercise to go through. And then we're going to cover some do's and don'ts. Actually, we're going to do that right now. I switched up my notes here this morning. We're going to cover the do's and don'ts first. Then I'm going to run back to the computer, and we're going to do some home buying, some house shopping. Is that okay? We're going to do some together as a class. We're going to walk through the process of getting excited for a house and then trying to figure out how it works into the budget, okay? Because that's really a critical thing. And I would say that most people probably struggle to save for retirement because they're driving too nice of cars and they're living in too big of a house. Those are probably the two main drivers. You can save money in your food budget and insurance and wherever else, but if you're really going to blow the budget out of the water, it's going to be with your house, and it's going to be with your car. So we're going to cover a few do's and don'ts here really quickly. And remember, we covered this concept. This is an overview of a couple of weeks. The Dave Ramsey principle that you really don't have enough money to buy a new car and look at $10,000 or $15,000, burn up in a bonfire. You don't have enough money for that until you have about $1 million in net worth, is a Dave Ramsey principle. And I think that's pretty good. You may not necessarily have to be there, but that's his principle to help protect against depreciating your money too quickly. Okay, especially when you really can't afford it. And here's a principle that I personally follow that was given to me down through the ages of my parents or something. I don't know. Don't go into debt for anything that decreases in value. And I think that's pretty good. So that would really set aside the idea that you could take out a mortgage. Okay, you could get a loan for a home. In theory, your home will not go down to zero in value, although we did see just recently in the recession that there's still risk there. But not going into debt for anything that decreases in value. That would be cars, that would be consumer debt, that would be appliances, whatever. Don't go into debt for those things, because what happens, you take the bill and then essentially the asset itself goes down to zero and you're stuck with a bill and nothing else. Okay, so that stinks. So that's why that principle is there. So here's one of the things I remembered from, actually I took a class called Investment Portfolio in college, and the professor, he gave this recommendation when it came to real estate. He said you should never go shopping for a house until you've set hard and fast budget parameters. So you never, ever want to look at a house that's above your parameters, okay? Because what will happen? You'll want it. You'll fall in love with something that you really shouldn't have, and then you'll do whatever you think. It's not a big deal. We can cut here, here, here. We just need the house. It's so beautiful. I love it. So don't shop first. Set your budget first. So that's sort of a highlight, sort of a principle to follow if you're going to go home buying. Anybody in the home buying process right now? Anybody? Just curious. Nobody. Okay. Well, maybe one day that you'll remember that and it'll come. When you're buying a home, here's another one. Pay 20% down. So this should really guide how you go about the purchase process. There's this nice little thing called PMI, Price Mortgage Insurance, right? Is that what it stands for? Yeah. And that's basically a penalty for borrowing too much, for being too risky. It's a way for the bank to recoup some of its losses, okay, or its potential losses, because you're more of a risky borrower. And so unless you're putting on a traditional loan, unless you're putting 20% down, you're going to be charged an extra $50 to $100 every month in what's called PMI. So you'll, just good stewardship there. Avoid it if you can. Put 20% down. That would be a good thing. So that really guided me and Lauren through our buying homes that we've bought in the past is, we want to make sure that we're saving up. And really not borrowing as much. We're avoiding PMI, so that it takes some time to save that 20% up, It takes some time, but it can be done. All right, so here's another principle. This one is a Dave Ramsey principle. You remember on that sheet I handed out in the first week, it had percentages of your income. Does anybody still have that sheet with them? I ran out of copies. I had some here, and I forgot it. But it breaks out how much, as a percentage of your income, your home should be, right? And it put it around 30% or whatever, 30 to 40% depending on your income. This principle here is different than that. This is a Dave Ramsey principle that says you should calculate how to find how much home you can afford. You should estimate your budget based on a 15-year mortgage. So calculate your price using a 15-year mortgage to avoid buying too much house. And in tandem with that, he says your mortgage should not exceed 25% of your income. So using those two principles together, we can find out how much house you actually can afford. And here's what you need to remember. The bank will gladly give you a bigger house than you can afford, okay? The bigger the loan, the more money the bank makes, the better for the bottom line, okay? So the bank is not going to help you out here, okay? When Lauren and I were buying this last house, we were approved for this amount. The house we're in now, we were approved in this amount, and we literally cut it in half, okay? That we literally cut it in half because it was just ridiculous how much money a bank will give you versus what you should actually borrow. Lastly, I met with the financial advisor years ago, and broke down my little salary starting out of college. I didn't make a lot of money at that time. I was living on my own. I kind of broke it down before Lauren and I got married, and just kind of worked through my own little budget, with my own little money. I didn't have a whole lot, and decided, well, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to save every month this number. And when I met with the financial advisor, he said, actually, that's the most successful behavior for people who save, is that they set a number that they try to save to every month. So if that number's $100 for you, or if it's $1,000, or whatever it is, pick a number that you can realistically save to in your budget and make that your goal. That is actually one of the single most successful behaviors that drives people who are successful with finance, is that they have a specific number that they're saving specifically every month as a goal. Okay, so these are some of the do's and don'ts. You can write those down and use those to guide you. We're going to take the 20% down this week. We're going to take the 20% down, and then we're going to take the 15-year mortgage rule there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here. I've picked out some homes for us to look through. You ready for this? I've picked some homes for us to look through. So let me go ahead and just pull it up. And I just kind of chose middle of the line budget here, so this price point may not be where you are. But let me go ahead and blow this guy up so we can see it. Cool. Brand new house. Looks real nice. I want to see what this thing looks like on the inside. Hey, notice we haven't looked at the price yet. We're just looking at the house. Ooh, yeah. Oh, look at those new hardwoods. Oh, man. So pretty, the granite countertops. I just love the kitchen. It's so beautiful. Oh, those cabinets, they're white just like I always wanted.
That's what my mama wanted.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about right there. Look at this house. It's so beautiful. Okay, well, you know what? We're going to try to look around a little bit. We're not going to fall in love with that house. Okay. By the way, the price is $244,900, okay? So keep that in your mind. And it's about what do we got? 4 beds, 3 baths, 2,700 square feet. So that's the specs on that home. Beautiful home. Okay. Here's another one. A little bit older, but it's actually the same square footage, just about almost the exact same square foot. 4 beds, 3 baths, same thing, different price. And let's look through this thing. Okay, yeah, I like that. Well, hey, look at that old carpet. It's a little dated. You know, that kitchen, I don't know. Look at those cabinets, not really what I'm liking. Okay, that's all right. I don't know. Okay, little laundry room there. It's all right. But I really love this house. And you know what we did? We just committed the first sin of buying real estate, and that is shopping for a home without setting your budget first, okay? So what we're actually going to do is we're going to take the price of these 2 homes and crunch the numbers, try and figure out what kind of mortgage we're going to go for, okay? This should be the process that you go through if you're buying a home and you're trying to do it in a way that's affordable. It's going to set you up for success with the rest of your budget, because if you get locked into a mortgage that's too high, it's really hard to get out of that, right? What are your options if you're locked into a mortgage that's too high? You can refinance, yeah. You could sell it. Any other? You could be foreclosed upon, I guess would be the worst. So, you know, it's not that easy just to, you know, cut the mortgage down. You have one opportunity to get it right, and that's really at the purchase price. Okay, so what we need to do is we really need to sit down and figure out our, we need to figure out our mortgage first. So we're going to go back to the PowerPoint here, and we're going to figure out the mortgage. We're going to look at what these houses would actually cost us, and then we're going to try to figure out if we can afford it based on the 15-year mortgage principal. It should not exceed 25% of your income, okay? So here we go. If you were to take out a 30-year loan, this is what it would look like for each house. Here we go. We got house A. This is the nicer house, right? This is the house. Remember the realtor commercials where there's the you and there's the not you, and it's like the you that wants the new car and the new house. This is that you, okay? You're feeling really just driven by consuming. So that's the price there. That's the amount of, I have loan there. I guess technically that should be price, but whatever. I just went out and I researched market rates, and I came up with 4.63 right now. You could probably get a little better than that depending on your situation, but we're going to go with 3 years. So that calculates out to, you can find this out pretty easily with an online calculator. That calculates out, not including taxes and insurance, if you put 20% down, about $1,000 a month. So that means you're only going to be borrowing slightly less than $200,000. That means if you're going to put 20% down, you need to save almost $50,000 before you buy this home, okay? And you're going to look at a monthly payment. If you put everything in escrow and all that with your taxes and insurance, your monthly payment will probably be about $1,250, $1,300 or something like that. You say, okay, that gives us a little bit of a clearer picture. But let's compare it. We still don't know if we can afford this house yet. So we got to keep working through the examples and see with house B, which was only $185. These houses were the exact same size. Everything was the same except for one was new, the other was not. Location was pretty similar. They were in neighborhoods pretty close to each other, and one was not next to like a power plant or something, okay, in case you're wondering. Same rate, same year. What does your monthly payment calculate out to be given that? So it's about $300 less if you go for the 30-year mortgage. And your down payment is going to be $37,000 as a 20% down. So that trims the amount you need to save pretty significantly if you're going to go after a home of this size. Now, if those numbers, the down payment seems extremely large to you, what does that mean? Too big of a house for you. too big of a house, you need to go for a smaller house. Okay, so that should be number one indicator. If 20% down seems like you'll never get there, you're looking at too big of a house. The next indicator is we're going to calculate the percentage that the monthly payment is of your income, and we'll see if we can afford it. So house A here, this is something I always look at when I'm looking at an amortization table. That's just a breakout of the principal and the interest that you're paying. So house A, the total interest you're going to pay over the life of the loan is $166,000 just in interest. Like, that makes me sick. I don't know if that makes you guys sick or if you care. That makes me sick. Like, if you could take that money and put it in your retirement plan, how much better off would you be set for retirement, right? That makes me ill.
It's almost the value of the smaller house.
That's right. Yeah, it's almost, Valerie says it's almost the value of the smaller house, and you're just paying that in interest. The older house, that's right, because they're the same size. So the other house, you're still paying a lot with a 30-year mortgage at 4.63. By the way, these are pretty good percentages on loans, historically speaking, but you're still paying a ton of money in interest. House B, you're still paying $126,000 in interest, and so your total cost for the first house is not $244. The total cost for the first house is $411,000 actually, okay? So when you're going through the purchase process, when you're going through a home, you should be looking at this and thinking, do I want to spend that much money over the next 30 years and throw it to the bottom line of the bank? I personally, that's not my preference, okay? The other house, after you calculate out all the amortization and all that, comes out to $311,000. So it's almost $100,000 cheaper, okay? Don't get thrown off by the purchase price. You need to look at the interest over the life of the loan if you're trying to figure out the cost, because this is real money, okay? This is coming out of your pocket. You're promising your future income to this. This is a big decision. This is a lot of money, right? So there's $100,000 difference. And that one moment where you went and you fell in love with those pictures, zzz, took $100,000 right out of your pocket. That stinks, doesn't it? Stinks big time. So now what we're really going to do is we're going to look at the Dave Ramsey principle of the 15-year. So what Dave Ramsey says, calculate a 15-year mortgage, and you should only buy a home with a 15-year. That's his principle. That's not personally what I did for another reason I'll share in a minute. But he says you should calculate your budget out using a 15-year. So we're going to do that with both of the homes. Same process here. You know what? We're going to do that with just one home. I forgot. We're only going to do it. We're going to say the you that wants the bigger home lost the purchase decision. The wiser you went with the cheaper home, and you decided it's going to be better. So what you're going to do is you're going to go for house B, which was only $185,000 only. And notice with 15-year, the market percentage is a lot less. Right now, that's a real percentage you can get with a 15-year. So you're saving a lot of money with a lower interest rate going after a 15-year, okay? So it's a 15-year. Your monthly payment, now look, your monthly payment has jumped up about $400. That's right, it has. What does that mean? That means you're probably going to have to go after a smaller house if you're going to do a 15-year mortgage. But that also means, as we're going to see here in just a minute, same down payment. That also means, as you'll see here, that you're going to pay a lot less for the home. So house B, here we go. Total interest, $40,000. That's a lot better. That's a lot better than $166,000, right? I still don't like to throw $40,000 away, personally. I prefer not to do that. It's a lot of money to me. But it's better than $166,000. And see that moment where you start looking at those pictures, you start falling in love with those hardwoods and those cabinets and that granite. Zit, say goodbye to your retirement plan, right? So the savings between house B with a, did I do that math right? I don't think I did. So the total cost of the home, if you go with a 15 years, $225,000. So the difference between, yeah, I did that right. The difference between a 30-year and a 15-year is $85,000. So you go to the store and you find something in the store and one is $85,000 more. Would you go after it? Nobody would. Same house, same thing. If something was going to save you $85,000, you would obviously go for that, wouldn't you? No, because we're stupid. We're falling in love with the house. We need to make that payment smaller. We're thinking about the here and the now, and we're not thinking about the future. That's what happens. That's what happens with most people. You've got to crunch these numbers and figure out what's going to be the best thing for your situation. So with a 15-year monthly payment at $1,048, include taxes and interest, you're probably looking at a mortgage payment of about $1,300 or so. About there, depending on what that ends up being. That should not exceed, according to the Dave Ramsey principle, that should not exceed 25% of your income. So we can easily figure out you should never buy a house with this, with these numbers, unless your income exceeds $60,000 a year. Okay? So that's what this means. Now the bank is going to give this to you even if you make less than that. But using these principles, you're making much wiser stewardship decisions, and it's going to guide you to make much more conservative decisions. Yes, you're going to live in a smaller, older house than what the bank will actually give you. Okay, the bank will give you a nicer, it'll give you that granite, it'll give you those cabinets you've always wanted. The bank will give you those hardwoods you've always wanted. It'll give you the extra bedroom and maybe the bigger windows and all of that. But it's really going to ruin your retirement plan. It's really going to suck up a lot of money. It's going to hurt your ability to be able to give towards the Great Commission, right? And we're really going to be sucked into this idea of consuming and buying for us. And just before we go any further, I want to cover, has anybody read the book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People? Okay, old book. It's usually recommended for salespeople. And it sounds very gimmicky, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But it's actually a phenomenal book. And he goes over this one principle. He wrote it back in the 30s. And he goes over this one principle that has just struck me in almost everything that I do. And he says in that book that people go into anything with two motivations: an honorable motivation and a real motivation. So that means, well, let's break this down a little bit. So when it comes to buying a house, what you're going to tell yourself is, here's your honorable motivation. I need a more wide open living room so I can have people over from the church. So I really actually need a bigger house. And I need to do this so that I can serve the Lord. I need the BMW so I can help the people, I can carpool or whatever. You have these honorable motivations that you try to talk yourself into, but what's the real motivation? I want what I want. It looks good. I want it. That's the real motivation. And with a lot of purchase decisions in life, we'll actually do this. And I remember talking myself into this, like, if we go with the wide open plan, more modern, updated feel, we could do more with our small group at church. We were at a different church at that time. And I was falling into the same trap, and thinking, bigger means I could do more for the Lord. No, I just wanted to consume. I wanted to enjoy the nicer stuff for myself. That's really all it boiled down to. And you try to deceive yourself into thinking that you're going to do something that, really you're after something, and it's probably coming from a sinful place, a sinful desire, a prideful desire. So know this about yourself when it comes to buying a home. And if you're going to buy a home in the future, what I would recommend is you go through this exercise using a 15-year mortgage. And if the monthly payment comes out to be a little too high, you could go with this philosophy, which is what I did personally. I went with the 30-year, although I crunched the numbers with the 15-year. Went with the 30-year, and now I just contribute extra towards the principal to pay it down. Now, I still have a worse interest rate, but that gives me the flexibility. If I need to have a lower payment, I can. So if, finances get real tight, find out Lauren's having triplets or something like that, and we all of a sudden need a couple extra, a little extra money. I can take that extra that I'm throwing towards the payment, and I can use it for whatever the current needs are. So that's another approach. You're not going to get the good interest rate, so the numbers aren't going to be as favorable, but that's another option. So the recommendation on that piece of paper that I handed out to you that says 30% of your income should not exceed, for your house. That number, I think personally for me, it's way too high. And I think that's maybe a good place to start if your numbers are all out of whack. But when I went through, my little geek sheet actually does calculate, we'll look at it in a minute, it actually calculates the percentage of each expense category. So I know how much as a percentage of my money is going to food, how much of percentage is going to, my house, how much is going to utilities and whatever else. My spreadsheet actually calculates that for me, so I can look back at 2017 and see exactly what percentage of my money went where. And that's very helpful for going forward into the next year and thinking, what should I do for the next year? Am I doing what I want to do? Am I accomplishing what I want to accomplish? Let me conclude here. We're out of time, but let me conclude here with just one silly little illustration. I want you to imagine really quickly that the Lord has sent his angel in a vision to you to speak with you. And in this vision, the angel says, I have a message directly from the Lord. I have a project specifically for you. This is straight from the top, from the Lord himself directly to you, and the angel is coming to you. And the angel lands out the plan for you, and the angel says this: you have one goal. Go and make disciples of all nations. You have one goal. That's your goal. And here's what we're going to do. The angel says, we're going to put you in Inman, South Carolina. He's going to give you the exact job that you have, the exact house that you have. And he says, I'm going to have kids. You're going to have kids, and he names off the kids that you actually have now and the job that you actually have now. And he's going to give you the salary, and that's the salary that you have now. And he says, one goal. Go make disciples. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, where you spend your money, your resources, your time, everything, you have one goal. And he says, bye. Poof. Gone. Imagine what you would do in that scenario, and then, in real life, put it into practice.